welcome to this week's piece. So this was supposed to be just a really easy paint job that I could show you guys something really fun with, and that would be it. Because I'm at my parents' house, and one of my aunts said that she had this desk that she wanted made over. So I thought it would just be, hey, I'll get a wood top out of this and do a paint job and it will be lovely. Not what happened. Not what happened. So right now, I still think this top is wood because I was told that it was wood. It is not. So I'm taking my clean strip, and I know that I'm going to need quite a bit of this because just by looking at it, I could see 3 different layers of paint. Let me tell you, 3 layers of paint isn't even close to what it was. Oh, P.S. Thanks for my coffees, guys. So excited about those. You guys really just keeps me going for projects like these. Anyways, back to it. So I use this entire can of clean strip, and I hardly ever use even a half a can on a single piece of furniture. I'm very minimal when it comes to stripper. I don't tend to use a lot of it. I usually don't need that much of it, but an entire can went over this in multiple coats, and paint just kept coming off. Multiple coats of paint kept coming off. And I was like, this is not the project I had in mind. Why is this happening? So it was never ending. Just never ending. So we're going to jump ahead because I can't possibly film all the amount of stripping that I did. But like I said, it went through this entire can. And then I had to go get another can. I used Citrus Strip because that was all that the little store down the road had for me. Let it sit overnight under the plastic. Still got nothing. The tabletop was still at something weird. It was coming up, and I finally got a chisel and was like, how deep is this going to go? Just so I could see how deep it was. Oh, folks, you are not going to believe this. So after about 1 billion pasta shred noodles, I realized this was some type of flooring, and the stripper had melted through a lot of it so that it just ripped up. And then we got to probably the most hideous piece of plywood underneath. So, lesson learned here, don't take a piece without looking over it first. Don't have it just brought to your house or wherever you're at to refinish. You will regret that decision. But we're going to work with it. So this still had like the trowel marks from the glue that was used to put the stuff down. So I'm just taking my Citrus Strip again and trying to get this cleaned off as much as possible so that I have a clean slate to work with to put down a wood top. And of course, this has to sit for a bit, so I can take a quick break and just be so thankful that my parents live in the forest. And while there is no reception out there, I do have a lovely view with a creek and all the things. So that's something to really be thankful for when things like this happen. So now we're going to remove the trim that is around the edge that I couldn't even see was there because it was just covered in so much old paint. Then I went in with my mineral spirits and just deactivated all the stripper and cleaned it up. I do have a steel wool pad. I just kind of am cleaning out this drawer. You see me cleaning it off. It's 1, because I wanted to use that hardware when it was finished. And 2, at this point, I was still thinking I could potentially fix that drawer. I could not. So I didn't need to strip the drawer, but it's good because I got to use the hardware, which was also covered in lots of paint. And then after making a phone call to my aunt trying to figure out what I was going to do to this top, she wanted to do planking on the top and kind of had she was just going to go pick up some wood. And I'm like, you know what? My parents always have wood all over the property. And I went and looked, and this is no joke, a stack of kindling. So most of the pieces in it were the same size. There were a few that I had to sort out that weren't, but I just started kind of creating a pattern with this. This is not, it's very rough sawn. Like, this isn't smooth by any means. You could get trim pieces and have a very finished look with this. That is not what this is. I knew this table was going to be rustic to begin with, so I wasn't too terribly worried about it. Plus, once you sand and do all that kind of stuff, you can kind of fix almost anything. So that's what we're doing. And I actually called my aunt. They came up, they brought me pizza because they had to. They really needed to buy me pizza. And so she looked it over and she was like, yes, I love that. So this was fully approved. It is a strange thing. I will probably never do it again because it was a task, but it did turn out lovely. So this is what we're doing. I just did the chevron pattern, which each of these things, all I did was cut a 45-degree angle on one end of these on the miter saw and then butted those up. Now the ends I'm not concerned about because we're going to cut them off later. So all I'm doing is making sure that they just come out further than the edge of the desk. That's all I'm concerned about. And then of course making sure that these line up, and if any of the wood pieces weren't perfectly straight or anything like that, I wouldn't use those pieces. I would just use the ones that would work and fit snugly against the one before it. Very, very easy, kind of puzzly, fun to do in that regard. And you saw once I did my dry fit, I just went through with actual glue and started gluing everything down. Now I made sure glue was covered on the bottom and on the piece of wood, and then where the two planks met together, there's glue in between there too. You do want glue squeeze out. If you wanted to, you could do pin nails or brad nails or, anything to hold these down into place, but wood glue is very, very strong, and I wasn't worried about any of the planks coming up. The only thing I was worried about is them not setting correctly, so as they were going, I would randomly clamp them down to make sure that they were being held in place. But I made sure I had squeeze out on everything and that everything was fully secured. This was not done in one fell swoop. I did leave time in between to kind of go over, make sure everything was going to work, and kind of just manage things in segments. It was just much easier for me that way. I'm going to let this dry overnight. You do absolutely want to make sure that this dries overnight, or that you can be 100% sure that your glue is cured, because we're going to use a circular saw on it and it's a little bit aggressive and you don't want anything popping up because your glue hasn't fully dried yet. So you guys have seen me do this before, but I just take a straight edge, clamp it down, and then I can use my circular saw to go around the edges, and I'm cutting off all the end pieces of that wood, and that is leaving me a perfectly smooth edge, and it looks lovely. This was the part I started getting really excited about this piece. Like, it was kind of on the verge when I was doing the chevron pattern down the middle. I'm like, I don't hate this. But then once I cut all these off, I was like, oh my gosh. Okay, now we're getting somewhere. So I was finally getting happy with this and not just sad. So of course you have to sand this. Again, if you were using trim pieces or something the like, you wouldn't have to do as much sanding as I did, but I started with this little sander. Keep in mind, I don't have all of my tools. I'm using the tools that are at hand, and it's never as comfortable using other people's tools. But so I'm giving the base a scuff sand in between, going back over the top and kind of making sure the rough sawn kindling pieces on the top are smoother. And then I actually went in with this other sander because it was an orbital, and I did an 80 grit on this and just was really having at it. Going with the grain, it required a lot of sanding. And I still wanted it to have that rustic look, but it still needed, even with that, I had to pick up the stain because of course I didn't have any of my stains with me. It actually turned out to be a really lovely color. It's gray, but still lets the natural wood come through, so it always ends up a little bit more warm than just straight gray, which I really, really liked. So I just mixed it up and put this all over the planks. And then it was time to tackle the drawer. I was really leaving this for last because I just wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. I would have been fine with just fixing the top, but then the bottom had like a little chunk taken out of the corner, and finally I'm like, you know what? I'm pretty sure I could build a drawer front because it's not dovetailed. Dovetailing would be a whole other story. but it's not. It's just a simple cutout, and they have the lines set in to hit the lip of the desk. I'm like, no, I can totally do this. So I found a pine board, traced it out, and then made sure that I got all of the grooves traced in also from the back side of the drawer. And really, you guys, it was so, so easy. It took me a hot minute just to kind of get the feel of things, but I mean, how cool is that? I made a drawer front, and you don't have to be as excited as I am, but I just was like, whoa, I can do things. That just means that you can also do things. I hope one of you out there at least thinks that it's cool and that you can also make a drawer front if I can. All right, so you can see that little shadow marked that I had blocked out with the pencil. That's how deep I need this cut to be. As you can see, I've already cut the board out to the right size, perimeter-wise. But now I'm just going to drop the blade down because I only want it to go up as high as that pencil mark, because that is how deep we want the inset around the lip of the drawer. So that's what's going to keep the drawer from going all the way in. It's essentially a drawer stop. So this is easy but tedious. So once you get your blade set, you can kind of leave it where you need to. Your fence, you will be moving microscopically over and over. This would be much faster if you had a dado blade. You could also use a router. Again, I'm at my parents' house and I don't have all of my stuff, so I'm using what I have. So I'm just making multiple cuts, and just so that I don't have to move the fence every time, I'm doing both sides of the drawer front, and then I'll come back and do the top later. But I'm just kind of testing it out. As I said, this is my first time doing a drawer front, and I am just making it work. So again, getting it through, making microscopic adjustments with the fence, bringing it in, and making more cuts. And this was awesome because my stepdad came out and was like, oh, this would be faster, because you can see my line is getting just larger and larger, a larger gap. He's like, make the cuts further apart and then just use a chisel to chisel out the rest of them. That'd be much faster than making microscopic millimeter cuts with the blade. And I was like, oh, that's so brilliant. So that's what I did. So I can now move the fence just a little bit further out, and I can leave gaps in the wood. And then I just used a chisel to chisel out the remaining wood that was left there. It's so cool to have another set of eyes on something. And I feel like that was the hardest part. So I'm just going through, and I now have to do the same thing but to the top lip, and then I also have to add in a just cut line along the bottom for the drawer bottom to slide into. And so I'll use the original drawer front to measure out how deep I need that cut to be and how high up the blade is, because it's actually a little bit deeper of a cut than the edge cuts. So I just use the previous drawer to measure that out, and then I can just make that same cut along the bottom of this drawer. And then we can move on to a dry fit. And I cannot tell you how exciting this was for me. Just that it went on and it was a drawer front. And I know that it's not that terribly big of a deal, but I just think it's cool to learn a new skill and be able to fix something next time. Again, it's nothing crazy, not like dovetails, but it is a drawer front and it was just nice to do. So I'm taking it, and the original drawer front had rounded over edges. So again, you could use a router for this, but I'm just going to use the sander. It still has the 80 grit paper on, so it takes over these edges really, really quickly. Once I was finished with that, it was time for the glue up. So I just made sure that I had glue all over the gluable surfaces. You don't put it on the drawer bottom because you want to allow for expansion and contraction, but you do it on the front and the sides. And then I just added in my finishing nails because that's how the original drawer was. They had finishing nails. I just put new ones in the same holes on the sides, and then they just went perfectly into the drawer front there. Okay, all of the hard parts are done, and that is just such a relief now. So I'm taking my Chalk Mountain Satin Poly, and I'm going to seal the top of this. I like to, when I'm doing tops, do them first and get them out of the way and fully sealed. That way, when I'm painting, if I happen to get paint on it, I can just wipe it back. However, this piece had something a little bit different going on. I'm going to add trim around the edges of the top, and so I wasn't too terribly worried about getting paint along the edges because it would have been covered anyways, but it's just kind of a habit that I'm in to always just finish the tops first for that reason. And it's typically a good reason, just in this case, not necessary. And also I'm going to be doing quite a few coats of poly. I want to say I did like 4 or 5 coats of poly on this. But now we can move to the base, and I have these amazing colors. They're very just calming and ethereal, and I really needed that after this project. So it's just a quick blend. You guys have seen my blends before. It's going from dark at the very bottom up to light, and I will have all of those colors in the description for you if you didn't catch them on the little clip right there. But yeah, so you guys have seen the blends going from dark to light. I have a 4-color blend here, and it just goes back and forth. That's kind of not the main focus of this video. If you want more blending videos, I have a million of them. You can go back and watch any of the other ones. But I'm just showing you this here on this is the first coat, and that's what we're doing. I ended up doing 2 full coats of this blend. I always perfect it on the second coat. Just the first coat is mainly for placement. So you can kind of just see what I do here. Just kind of the same. I feel like legs are always really easy in this regard. You just want to make sure that you don't miss any of the sides. So if you're working on legs, make sure that you're actually like moving around and looking at the back, because it never fails. You'll get everything finished and you'll see that you've missed a spot, which is very upsetting. All right, I did add a bit of a ghost stencil off camera, and that's just because this is the exact same stencil I did on the Halloween challenge piece, and I didn't want to bore you, but it's there, done in the seashell metallic paint, and it's lovely. So I'm going to seal this entire piece with Chalk Mountain's lavender wax. Oh my goodness, this stuff is just, it's incredible. It smells so good. If you like lavender. If you hate lavender, you will hate this because it smells exactly like putting your face into a lavender plant, which I would do. And I just had to show you another scene just at my parents' house. It's foggy and delightful with all the trees everywhere, and it makes me happy. So now we're adding the trim on. The trim is already finished with the gray and everything. I just did that when it wasn't attached, and now I can add on the trim and get it all glued, and then I will use finishing nails to attach this as well. So this is done at a 45. I cut the first piece at a 45-degree angle on the end, and then I'll measure out the other end against the desktop. Guys, I don't like using a measuring tape to measure. I literally use the piece that I have to measure everything out. So that's what I do. And I'll just make a mark with a pencil or a pen or whatever I can find at the time. So yeah, just adding this piece on, and then I take my other piece of trim that has the 45 on it because it was a very long piece. So it already has the 45 on it. It just gets flipped over and I can butt it up against the first piece of trim and then measure out where I need to make the cut on the back side. And then I will do the same thing all the way around.
Oh hi, Taryn here with Elegant Upgrades, and boy oh boy did this one it almost beat me. It was so close. I had no idea what to do with it. It was just out of control. But we ended up coming through. It looks incredible. It's a very rustic style kind of farmhouse, but with a blend. It's lovely. I cannot say that enough. I'm so pleased with how it turned out because I did not think it was going to turn out. I thought it was gonna go far away, maybe into the fireplace. I don't know, it was bad. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure it was laminate, something on top under the 70 layers of paint, not solid wood. I was told that it was a wood top, not a wood top. It is a plywood board and not a good one. Underneath for the structural part of it. So we obviously had to cover that up. I found this in one of the piles at my folks' house, which is just awesome. And we did this great design on it and built my very first drawer front. That was exciting. Now I know I can do that. Next is dovetails. Just kidding. I've got quite a ways to go before I'm willing to do an entire drawer. But I'm very pleased. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope you learned so much from all that I went through in this piece, and I hope that you love it as much as I do. So anyways, again, we're so close to this close to 5,000. I can't believe it. I feel like I've said that in the last 3 videos, which is just, it keeps getting closer and closer, and I keep getting antsier and antsier. So thank you so much to those of you who are subscribed and that just totally support me every single week. You guys are just amazing. Thank you. All right, let's get some picture this little beauty, and I'll see you next time. Mom? Are you shy now? No. Say, please subscribe to my mom. No, that's weak sauce.